So what you are seeing now is the BSI web interface, and I'm going to go ahead and log on to the demo database. So a couple of new things that we started to go over yesterday is one, in my user profile I can now set how many search results I want to see per page. So I'm going to do that and submit my changes. And then in the Specimen Search and other searches as well, I can copy and paste in IDs. So I can go ahead and search. Let me run this search, and then I'll show you if I then, see I only have 10 specimens shown on my page. And then if I add an ID field like BSI ID, I can copy in values to search on. So here I have a listing of BSI IDs. I'm going to copy some, and then I'm going to go to list. So next to the field there is a list button, and I'm going to paste them in. I'm going to type some garbage in at the bottom, and then I'll hit the next button. And notice anything that it could find and normalize, it checks off. And then anything that it doesn't recognize as a BSI ID or whatever format you're using, it's going to put in red down here and tell you how many values it's normalized. If you want to remove the values from your search, you can uncheck them here. But I'm going to keep them all, and then I'm going to press finish. And then it adds the IDs to my search line, concatenates them with the semicolon, and then I can run my search again. And there you go. There's the values that I just searched on. The other thing I want to show you in the BSI web is that you can click and drag columns now to move them around, and so you can change your user view by user here, and it is saved between sessions. Another new enhancement is that the shopping cart, so I already have 12 specimens added to my shopping cart here. That's why these aren't available for me to select. The shopping cart is no longer per session and actually persists for each user between sessions. So to show you, I'll go ahead and select a couple new specimens to add to my shopping cart. You can see 2 have been added to the cart. We can go ahead and look at my shopping cart. These are specimens that I might want to add to a requisition. And I'm going to go log out and then log back in, if I can spell my name correctly. And if I go back to specimens, you can see those records are still in my shopping cart. And then I can select them and create a requisition if I want to. Oh, it looks like I have warnings for my requisition. I'll exclude those. So anyway, so the things that are new with BSI Web is the ability to limit the number of, or pick the number of records returned on your search. So here, the ability to move column headers around and create a view for yourself here, and then the ability to copy and paste a list of IDs to search on. As well as a shopping cart that persists between sessions. So that's BSI Web. I'm going to go and switch to the client now to show you some new features in locations and requisitions. So here's my BSI client. I'm going to navigate to locations. One of the new features in locations is the ability to scan a specimen to move it within locations. So the specimen that you scan a BSI ID or current label. It has to be recognized by the system as a valid BSI ID and current label, and the specimen has to be available to have a location. So it has to be in, on hold, reserved, or discrepant. So you can't scan back in specimens that have been shipped out. You have to go return them to inventory through your requisition because there's other information you want to add for them. This is simply for moving specimens within boxes. Now I'm going to scan into the current box, but you can scan into any box. I'm going to scan, say, this specimen or this specimen into the current box, but it doesn't matter where you scan it as long as the BSI ID or current label is recognized. So I'm going to I'm going to select a cell in a box. So here I'm viewing box 1 and freezer 1, rack 1. Select the cell and then scan vials into locations. So my scan vials into location dialog opens, and then I can scan in a current label or a BSI ID. Now I don't have a scanner, so I'm typing it in. Obviously a scanner would be much faster. And then hit scan. And you can see that the specimen moved from this cell to this cell. Now again, it doesn't have to be within the same box. It could be anywhere in locations as long as the system recognizes the BSI ID or current label. And then you can see it moves to the next adjacent box to the right, and I can keep scanning to fill the box or to move specimens in the box. Another new locations feature is the ability to condense specimens. So basically to move all the specimens up, it moves it right to left across each line up so that you can basically fill a rack or a freezer starting with rack 1, box 1, or box 1. I'm going to show you just as an example to condense specimens in this box so we can see visually that the specimens are moved up, and then I'll show you condensing in the rack. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on my box, and you can see I have a new Condense Specimens option. Now there is a new role permission under locations for this option, so not just anybody can do it. You have to actually give the users role permissions to do this. And I'm going to pick Condense Specimens. What I'll get is a summary of the movement. So vial moves are 12, so 12 vials are moving. There's no empty boxes created, and there will be 88 available slots when I do this. So I can say OK. So vial movement is happening in the background. Of course, the audit trail is being recorded for it. You can see it on the vial movement report. And all my specimens are basically pushed up, starting with row and column A in my box. I can also do the condense for a rack or a freezer. I'm going to click on the rack. Well, first I'll show you that I believe there are some specimens in box 2. So I'm going to click on my rack, and I'll right-click it, and I'll go to Condense Specimens. It'll generate a summary for me. So it's going to move 57 specimens are affected by the move. There'll be 9 empty boxes when I'm left, when I'm done, so I'll go through from 8 empty boxes to 9 empty boxes, and I'll have 931 available slots. So I'll say OK. Again, the move happens in the background. History is recorded, and you can see it in the vial movement history. And then if I go to box 1, I can see that all of my specimens have been condensed, have been moved and filled into box 1. So it's just a very quick way to move specimen records to condense specimens in your freezers as defined in BSI. So I'm going to go ahead and show you something else called a Specimen Lineage. So if I right-click on a specimen in my locations, I have, of course, a whole bunch of options that were added with 7.2. If I go to View Specimen Data, so this is just kind of a quick snapshot of my specimen, a quick report, there's a new tab, a new Lineage tab added, and this I can do a quick tree of the specimen lineage. So remember, whenever you aliquot or process a specimen, BSI keeps track of lineage, so it records a parent ID for that specimen. and a source ID, the original specimen. So in the lineage tab here, we show a tree of specimens and where they came from. So here's a specimen that I selected to look at the specimen viewer from, to look at some data from. And you can see all of its sisters next to it and its parent up here. So it's just a quick way to look at lineage from the specimen viewer. Again, to get to the specimen viewer, it's from the right click either in My Specimens or Locations or actually anywhere there's a BSI ID. You can right click on the record and go to View Specimen Data. So here's the specimen viewer that was added with 7.2 where you can see a bunch of different data for the specimen, including what requisitions it's been in. There's a new tab called Lineage where you can see the specimen and its sisters and also its parent up here. So that's new stuff with locations, new stuff with the specimen viewer. The next thing I want to show you is in requisitions. It's a scan to complete, an RTI task. So you can see here I've shipped stuff out and I'm receiving it back into my requisition. I have completed our return to inventory for 3, but I want to scan to complete a return to inventory for the others. So I'm going to select my specimens that have not been returned yet, and right-click on the task and go to Change Status, Scan to Complete. Now previously you could scan to complete, say, a ship or some generic task. We've recently added to the return to inventory. We are considering it for all tasks. So now I have my return to inventory dialog with the only addition being the scanned column here. Notice that it says false no to begin with. That means that the record wasn't scanned. I can then go to Scan Vials, set up what I'm going to scan and match on. So I'm going to match on current label. I'm going to pick a location. I'm going to actually assign locations while I'm scanning. And I'll hit Scan, and let me move this down. And then I'll scan in a current label. And again, I don't have a scanner, so you just have to bear with my lousy typing for just a second. And if I hit Enter, the value, if it's matched, if the current label is matched, it's marked as true yes, and I can keep on scanning. Obviously, this would go much faster if you had a scanner. So they're marked as true yes, and then if I commit this, yes, I've updated my thaws. If I commit it, notice that only the ones that I've scanned are actually marked as completed. So it's a quick way of seeing, of adding locations, of scanning to show that I'm returning specimens, I'm doing my inventory, and then I can see which ones I didn't get because the task is not marked as completed and they're not returned to inventory. So that's simply the return to inventory with scanning. The dialog's the same except for the scan column and the ability to scan and only mark specimens that you've scanned as completed. We'll return them to inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And then finally, I'm going to go back and review what I showed you yesterday in subjects. So the subject attribute editor has changed in order to be able to add edit checks for subject data. So I'm going to click over to the subject module. So the other thing that's changed is that the subject module is no longer 2 separate modules. It's one multi-manager module. So under the manager menu, you'll no longer see subject attributes. Everything will be listed under the subject manager. I can still see my subjects and enter subject data just like I did before on the editor. Nothing has changed with that except for now it's in the same module under the same tab as subject attributes. If I go to subject attributes, I'm going to click on one that I've already defined and edit it. So this is for my protected study. And so here's my subject attribute editor. Notice there are some changes. There's a tree over here on the left If I click on subject attribute, it gives me the general properties for my study, for subject attributes for this study, whether a subject ID is required for the study, and what format I want that subject ID in if I generate it. These features are already in the system. And then I can define fields for my subject attributes. So if I look at my fields, I define them over here. I enter field name, display order, the same data that you entered before for subject attributes, except that now, dependent on the field type, I can enter value properties. So for instance, for character fields, I can enter a valid size and valid characters for my subject data. So I can kind of define what the values should be like. For choice fields or multi-choice fields, I can define on the Value Properties tab what those values should be. I can basically define a code list from users to select from. For an integer, such as age, I can define a valid range of values. And for a date, I can define whether the date will accept future dates or not. So to add a new subject field over here, I can press the Add Field button, and I can enter properties, I think, for my field. So this one might be a yes/no field. And then I would save my definition. Now, if I wanted to, I like the old way of adding subject attributes through the table, and I still wanted to do that. I could simply just click on a field name and toggle to the table view. And what I get over here on the right side is a table just like I was used to before in the old subject attribute manager. So you can still enter line by line your subject attributes. But I'm going to click back, and then I'm going to go to verifiers. So verifiers are edit checks, and so now users can enter their own edit checks for subject attribute data and for consent data, which I showed in the first webinar. And I'm going to show you an example. Here's just a summary of all the verifiers that I have for this study, for the subject attributes for this study. And I'm going to show you an example of an edit check. So here I have date of birth, and I'm defining the edit check over here, and I'm going to make it an error. An error will stop you from saving subject data. A warning will just warn you that it might not be correct. So it's up to you to define the severity. And then I am going to define my the conditions that, when met, will generate the error. So these are the conditions that I want the error to show up. So I'm saying date of birth is greater or equal to 1/1/1985. So anybody born after 1985 shouldn't be in my study, and I want to flag those values right away if I'm entering them in subject data. So I define my criteria up here and add to verifier criteria down here. Now it looks just like the standard search screen. And I can add as much criteria as I want to. I could define a verifier such that if alive is yes, has the value yes, then age of disease must have a value. So you can define all kinds of verifiers within one field, between fields. Just keep in mind that the criteria that you define down here are the criteria that need to be met in your values to generate the error or warning. So once I define my criteria, I can go and test it. So it's giving me a form view of my subject attributes. And if I enter a date of birth, or DOB, let's see, I'll enter it 1986, I get an error. Date of birth cannot be after 1/1/85. And this is going to prevent me from saving my subjects. Now this is just a test. And you can also see the other edit checks that are applied because you've defined fields as required. So I've defined first name, last name, and disease as required fields for my subject attributes. So that's the new subject attribute editor, how to define a new subject attribute, how to define a verifier. I'm going to close this and then just go to subject real quick and show you, this is the subject editor. Remember, I can edit multiple subjects at one time. I can import here. I can even toggle to a form view if I wanted to. I just want to show you that if I enter a date of birth here, that's over the specified date, so it's past 1985, I will get my error that I defined on the verifiers tab. So that's it. That's all I have to show you. If there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and I'll be happy to show anything over again if you'd like to see anything again. It says, for scan file into locations, how are duplicate current labels handled? You'll get an error, I believe, saying that you can't, it has multiple matches and that you can't use the current label then to scan and move stuff into locations. It has to be a unique current label. Is there history behind a file when changing the file location via scanning into a location? Yes. Any location move is saved in the location history, and you can get to it from the file movement history report. So that's under reports and then history, file movement history. So I think today is the 24th. Let me move my report over so you can see it. So here are all the movements that I've made today. You can see I practiced a bit, and then I also did the condense. So it's going to move a lot of specimens. And also when I added new specimens, it tracks them here too. So any file movement is recorded in history. Now those were the two questions that I had. I'm going to wait a couple minutes to see if any more questions come in or if anybody wants me to show anything over again. But I do encourage you to get on beta. These enhancements that I showed you today should be available on your everybody's beta database, so you don't need to get on demo to try them out. Feel free to practice and try them out, and we appreciate feedback. So I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any questions. The subjects which are added to subject attributes, will they be linked with inventory reports? Yes. So if you're not familiar with the subject module, every time, if you have study level security and you have the subject module added to your database, and it's if you don't, it's just a quick RFE to add some database tables and then it'll show up. Whenever you add, you can add subjects through subject to begin with, or you can add subjects through adding specimen data. So every time you add a specimen record, we add a record for that subject ID to the subject table. So, and you can search on subject attributes to pick inventory, to pick specimens, and let me show you. So if I go to user-defined listing and say maybe I want to display, BSI ID, I want some material types, and then I can go down to subject tables, and I get basically a table for each subject that I've defined attributes for that I have the ability to see. There are study level permissions in order to see subject attributes for a study. So you can completely hide them from a section of users. So if I go to my subject table down here, I can search on any of the subject attributes that I've defined in order to find specimens. So let me go to search. So maybe, let me pick a better value to search on, or one. So sex equals male, maybe I want material type equals, and hopefully I have some, I know I have some whole blood. So I can see how many men I have whole blood for in my study and see other subject attributes. So yes, you can search on the subject attributes in conjunction with your inventory data. So any other questions? I'm going to wait just a minute more to see if there's any additional questions, and then I'll go ahead and end the webinar if there's not. If you do think of questions later on, feel free to email BSI feedback or email me offline. There's a question about adding comments to specimens, which is easy to do. You go anywhere you do like a mod batch or an add batch. Let me go, I'm in locations and I'm going to edit my specimen. Here's my, I'm in the form view, but I can go to an editor as well. There's a new comment field. You just press on, oh, well, it's not working right now, but if you press on the ellipsis here, you can enter a comment. The comments are stored. You can search on comments and a history of comments as well. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, but please feel free to send any other questions either via email or give tech support a call, and we'll be happy to answer them offline. I will append these questions to the webinar when it's broadcast on www.bsi-ii.com, so look for them there. Thanks again. Bye-bye.